SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
State Treasurer David McRae is returning record amounts of money to Mississippians, whether it's through the College and Career Savings Program or the millions in unclaimed money awaiting your claim. Treasurer David McRae says get your application and claims today. Treasury.ms.gov.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Snowmageddon's headed this way, isn't it? But I'm not sure where it's going to affect us here in the Magnolia State. Am I correct in the latest maps? It looks like areas south of us are most at risk of wintry weather. They're talking about snow in New Orleans. What about that?
Still looks like it's about a coin flip at this point. So
yeah, but I'm headed up there to Washington, D.C., and now it appears I will be arriving to the snow in the area. And the following day, of course, the inauguration. All right, last I checked. Check it out for me there, Rhino. It was a high of 26. Northwest winds 15 miles per hour. What's it look like now on Monday? Jeez.
High of 24, a low of 9.
There you go. All right. Now we're talking. Come on. You ain't cold. What's the wind now? That's what I'm worried about is blustery north winds. Northwest, I think, is the latest direction I saw.
Yeah, it's still west-northwest with 12-mile-an-hour wind.
Oh, it's subsiding a bit. It's down to 12. Earlier in the week, it was 15 to 20. Then it went to 15. Now we're at 12. But bright sunshine.
Finally got the chart to come up. Looks like you're in luck.
What?
It looks like that low of 9 will be midnight going into Tuesday.
Oh, nice.
So it'll be 25 first thing on Monday.
Gosh.
And it's going to go down to 22 before the sunrise, and then get up to 23, and that'll be about where it stays.
You're killing me.
Hey, but it's not the single digits. Single digits is after the inauguration.
That's true.
The next morning.
I think that 25 is more bearable. It's that 12 miles per hour north wind that concerns me. What does that put the wind chill down to, like minus 40 or something? It makes it cold for sure. And that's the concern. But, a little while, no big deal. But I think we're talking 4 to 5 hours potentially out there. But it's a big old day coming up. Number 47. I'm hearing reports now that the number of executive orders could exceed 100, as has been rumored before the day is out. Most of those will involve rolling back stuff that, think about this, stuff that Biden instituted that were rollbacks of what Trump instituted. So we're just playing ping pong here up in the White House. Bump, bump, back and forth. Man, oh, man. Maybe we can get this right and just leave it alone. That's what I hope happens. I saw a report this morning. I got to start with a little fodder, if that's okay with you. Little fodder concerns a new phenomenon I never heard of before. It's called telephobia. You heard of that?
Is that the fear of talking on the phone?
Correct.
Yeah, that's a young person thing.
Yes. They're so accustomed to just communicating via text in writing as opposed to, I don't know, talking to people using that God-given gift of vocal cords and speaking for human communication. Nottingham College is running coaching sessions on phone confidence and etiquette to support them in overcoming their fear known as telephobia. Now, folks out there that are around my age or even older or a bit younger, just kind of bracketing my age, probably remember like a whole week on phone etiquette. Now, this was long before, of course, we had these wireless mobile devices. But you
we still did that.
Okay.
We had to film ourselves and then watch it again and critique it.
Well, we didn't have recording equipment back then.
Well, in fairness, compared to what we have now, it was archaic.
Cryptic.
It was one of those big old VHS camcorders on a tripod, weighed about 40 pounds.
And produced the standard format VHS.
Had a big barcode on the side because it was borrowed from the library to use it for the class. Did you scan it in to know its location? Oh, gosh. So, with that big pen barcode scanner that worked about a third of the time.
Infrared pen. I think I told you I installed systems that utilized those. We thought that was some kind of high tech, and it was in 1987, as I recall when I installed.
Every single textbook had big, deep lines dug into the barcode where they were just digging into it, thinking, "Oh yeah, that'll make it read better. Push harder."
That, by the way, my friend, I think is called the ISBN code, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I don't remember what that's. I used to know, but that also applied, by the way, the first system I installed using that technology, I think I told you, was in Bebop record shops. People in Mississippi remember that. We implemented that for them. And that was high tech rather than the old cash registers.
International Standard Book Number.
Okay, and it was book number and international. I couldn't remember if the S was standard or not. But there's a similar standard for recording products. Back then, records, tapes, of course. This was pre-CDs, by the way, records and tapes. And they all had the barcode, the industry standard on it. And you bring it to the counter there, and they would scan it with the old infrared wands, is what we called them.
On the records, it would be the ISRC.
Okay.
The International Standard Recording Code.
There you go. Okay. So that was pretty neat stuff back then, I'll have to tell you. I mean, it was rather revolutionary going from cash registers. I mean, it's pretty productive, pretty efficient, and improved the experience. And that's just another example of where do you go where that's not in place? Nowhere, virtually. I mean, there's a few
apparently
people.
We've arrived in a future where you are afraid to talk on the phone.
That's a good point. Like, wait a second. We got ubiquitous QR barcode product identifiers that don't require someone to type an amount and a code in. That's the purpose of that. Very fast, very efficient, very accurate. I remember my dad, Ron, used to go to the grocery store, and back then you had the big old clunky cash registers, and you have to push the keys down, and that would record the price. And look, when they're doing it that fast, it wouldn't be intentional, but they make mistakes. And man, my dad, he'd get that tape they'd give you, a record of every single charge. He'd go through it to make sure it was all right, because they're doing it at such rapid speed, and the little numbers pop up in the window on the cash register. Oh, man. He was frugal in that respect and wanted it right. Who didn't? So a U-Switch survey of 2,000 people found 70% of people between the ages of 18 to 34 prefer a text to a phone call. 23% saying they don't answer the phone if it rings. Donna, 16, said she was mostly anxious when the phone rang, quote, because it's normalized for our generation to be used to text messages. Evie, 17, said she, quote, hates taking phone calls. Obviously, this individual is from the UK, because her quote, here we go, "The only people I'll call are my mom." Right? That's the way that it is referred to and pronounced in the UK. Or my dad. But anyone else, I don't want them to call me because it feels quite formal. And that's not something I'm used to. Good grief. Oh, man. Another student, Jack Kent, age 18, said he kept his phone on silent most of the time because the sound of it ringing, quote, makes me nervous. Boy, you got problems. Well, set it on some ring that doesn't make you nervous.
I mean, in fairness, there was a time in college when if a certain ringtone went off on my phone, it did make me nervous. But that's because I had given my dad's phone number the Darth Vader song from Star Wars, the dun, 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 dun. So if my phone started doing that, I knew something was wrong or I was in trouble.
And everybody around you are looking for the stormtroopers, right? I'm sorry, folks. Got to have a little fun here on a Friday because next, we're still going to have fun. It's Representative Hank Zuber. He, of course, is from the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast, a member of the House. And we're going to talk to him about the tax bill that passed yesterday and get other updates from the 2025 legislative session. We got to talk about TikTok as well, Rhino. The Supreme Court said, yeah, go ahead and ban it. Coming right back. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays with a little blue-collar man. That, of course, is Sticks, bumping us into this segment. We're pleased to welcome now Hank Zuber. He represents District 1 to 13 in the Mississippi House of Representatives. That's Jackson County. He's chair of the House State Affairs Committee. Representative Zuber, thanks for joining us, sir.
Gerard, good morning. It's another great day in Mississippi. It's the following day where the House of the Mississippi House of Representatives has provided the leadership on transformational legislation.
Yes, sir. And, of course, you are referring to, of course, the rather sweeping tax bill, HB 1. I was in the gallery yesterday. Don't know if you saw me taking in the discussion. And I thought it was good. It was robust. And even opponents, I thought, came to the front. Came to the podium and made some decent points, and I think showed that they also have an interest in providing tax relief. As you know, it's just a matter of what the proper approach is. But this thing passed, as is. I don't think I saw any amendments that got added, right? It passed as it came out of committee. Is that right?
That's correct, and as you know, it was bipartisan, as Speaker Jason White mentioned.
Yes.
And, Gerard, I kind of some people can get stuck in the weeds and they can't see the forest from the trees. But to me, the big picture, if you think about it, it was the moral and the ethical and the correct thing to do because we're shifting the tax burden in this state away from the worker, away from one's work ethic to consumption. And to me, it was an easy vote. I mean, that's just the right thing to do in terms of what's moral and what's ethical and the way, taxation should take place in the state.
Yeah. And, I mean, this has been, I think, a key tenet of conservatism for decades with respect to the most efficient and productive way of generating the necessary revenue to operate government, and that is to collect those revenues on consumption as opposed to production work, if you will.
We share. That's right. We share the same view. That's exactly what I stated. Is that it's moving the taxation burden, shifting it from income, work to consumption.
Yeah. Now, we had a speaker on yesterday, and he was kind enough to stay with us for 3 segments, so we dug into the details quite a bit. And one of the things, of course, I posed to him that I'll let you talk about as well is you've no doubt seen and heard from the public on this, and my guess is you've got conflicting reaction has kind of been my sense of it, that some people really think this is a great deal, and some people have concerns, and it's understandable. A lot of that, I think, Representative Zuber, stems from the fact that when you're dealing with taxes, it's just complicated. And I wish it weren't, but we have, both at the federal and the state level, in virtually every state, we've just made it complicated because we got different functions of government that derive their revenue from different sources, and the combination of all that kind of adds up to our overall individual tax burden. But where I'm going with this is one of the objections you've no doubt heard is that, wow, you're cutting income taxes, but you're raising taxes on retail sales and you're applying a sales tax on fuel. This just sounds like you're just swapping taxes. I'm not really getting any true net relief. What do you think?
I don't know what they're basing that on, okay? You cannot just pick 1 year or 2 years and see what the tax result is. The goal of the legislation is to reduce taxes, what was it, almost $1 billion, something like that, over the 10-year period. So if you look over that 10-year period, Gerard, it is not a tax swap. It is a significant tax reduction. So those people who are coming up with that opposition, they're just picking out what the result is after the first 2 or 3 years and not looking at the whole time period of the legislation.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. And, just full disclosure, I have shared some models on that, some cases, I guess, if you will, in social media. I've done some here as well. Everybody's situation is no doubt different. But here's what I would share with you is that anytime somebody sees, okay, you're cutting over here, but you're adding over there, the natural reaction is, without going through a mathematical exercise to review your personal circumstances, you're just changing it around. You're just shifting the ball from one bucket to another. I'm not really getting any net relief. You unfortunately got to go through a math exercise to figure out what it means.
Well, whenever you include the grocery tax reduction, it's again, in terms of what the net result is, it is a tax reduction for just about everybody in the state of Mississippi, and that's a fact. I mean, that's what it does. Yeah.
Well, I agree with you, but I think that's absolutely true. Certainly once you get to the terminal aspect of the plan where the income tax is fully phased out, and that, of course, offsets the slight increases in sales tax and then the application of a new tax on the purchase of fuel. And then, of course, you're right. You have to figure into that as well the reduction in the overall combined sales tax on groceries. And all that has to be added up to figure out what the net effect is. One of the concerns, of course, is that the full 1.5% additional local tax on all goods, except for those that are not presently subject to the full 7% tax rate, that goes into effect July 1, 2026, but the phasing out of the income tax takes place over 10 years. And so there's a timing issue where the net is fairly minimal until you really get about halfway into the phase out of the income tax.
Gerard, I realize that, but you got to look at the complete time frame of the legislation. I mean, the people who were opposed to it to begin with, and I think they realized what the big picture was. You cannot get lost and into the details as to what happens the first year or two. A plan is a 10-year plan. If you look at the 10-year result of that piece of legislation, it is a tremendous and large tax cut for just about every Mississippian. So, it's not right to just look at what happens in year 2 or year 3. You got to look at the complete lifespan of the plan and what happens, at the end of the legislation in year 10. Yeah.
And I'm with you. I agree. I'm just pointing out what I'm hearing from the public as concerns, and I respect the heck out of you, and you know what you're doing, and I am as grateful as ever for your support and your leadership. Again, I'm just trying to channel the voice of what I'm hearing. I want you to know that, Representative Zubin. You and I are on the same page, and you know that. But I think people think short term. They don't think long term, and they want to know, what does this mean for me, to me, today? And
no, that's true. And some people, they're looking at the trees instead of the forest. I get it.
Yeah.
But again, it's another example, similar to PBMs and last year with PERS, where the House under the leadership of Speaker Jason White is providing the guidance, is setting the example and the leadership to move the needle. And to move Mississippi forward. And, it's not just about, hey, what happens to my pocketbook? That's a large part of it. That's what people are worried about. But it also allows us to compete with our sister states, other states in this region, and other foreign countries to bring investment and high-paying jobs to Mississippi.
Yeah, there's no doubt that states do compete on the basis of what their tax environment looks like, and there's no doubt that our adjacent states in particular that we compete quite handily with, they're all taking a hard look at reforming their tax environments to be more competitive. And that's a good thing. We've seen action recently from, I think, Louisiana and I believe Alabama. They're all taking action to try to trim their tax burden to make the state more attractive to investment, no doubt. We got a break right here.
That's exactly right. And whenever the governor goes out and the speaker goes out and the lieutenant goes out, governor goes out to try to bring investment to the state, they can go out and say, if the Senate passes this bill as is, they can tell these future investors and businesses that it does not require any further legislative action to reduce the income tax.
Yeah.
At that 10-year period, Mississippi will no longer have an income tax. And so there's no other further action by the legislature that is needed. And Gerard, never forget that consistency, that permanency, that's a big selling point.
I got it.
Okay.
Hang on. We keep talking if you can stay with us.
Okay.
We're coming right back.
Family Termite at Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
People of the earth, can you hear me? Came a voice from the sky on that magical night.
We're back with you on Middays. We are discussing tax reform and other things with Representative Hank Zuber from Jackson County. All right, so Representative Zuber, I totally agree. You got to look at it holistically. You got to consider all the moving parts and pieces.
Sure.
And that's what we've attempted to do here. I've had some folks that have shared their personal info, and I've run it through a model, and just to give them a sense of, okay, this is what it means to you. Now, you're, of course, estimating roughly how much you spend on that which is subject to the new 8.5% sales tax, that which is subject to the lower sales tax on grocery with the terminal rate at 4%, which is 3% savings from the current rate. And then you got the 5% on fuel. So everybody's situation's different. I get it. But you also got to take into consideration those who are paying income taxes. A significant decrease when we get to zero, you don't have a tax liability. So all positive.
Yes. Gerard, I almost forgot. I'm driving home. But,
yeah.
I don't know how much time we have.
Okay.
But as you know, the Speaker has given us the green light to look at the the overall state's procurement system and IT infrastructure. And you're going to love this. This is right up your alley. I have been working very closely with Jill Ford. I believe she may even be your state representative.
She is. Yep.
In addition to Scott Delano and Bart Williams over in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see a piece of legislation. We're kind of working on the final language. But I think you're going to see a piece of legislation that will be a game changer for the future of Mississippi for the next 50 to 75 years. Now, Gerard, what am I talking about? I'm talking about helping our state agencies, okay, both general and special fund, move away from hard drives, mainframes, to the cloud storage. And this may surprise you. Do you know we still have some state agencies that are using mainframe computers?
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that. They've got legacy software that would need to be converted and replaced with a software that can operate on open systems platforms.
That's correct.
That's a massive investment. Takes a lot of time, but I've been talking about this in the state for over 30 years.
Well, it should have been, Gerard, it should have been 20 years ago it should have been done.
Yeah.
I mean, the private sector got rid of mainframes, back in the 80s? Maybe the 90s?
Well, not exactly. Most financial institutions in this country still operate on legacy mainframe platforms because they're just bulletproof, and it's really, really hard to just forklift them, as we say in the industry. But they put end user interfaces on that. You don't know that there's a mainframe in the background. You're right in that it is expensive to operate and maintain mainframes.
You're right about that, but the maintenance, the upkeep,
yes,
the contractual responsibilities are so much more compared to the cloud storage. So, I mean, not only is it the right thing to do, it's more efficient, it's more secure, it's going to save us a ton of money, Gerard.
It is. I just caution you that you can't just take the software that's currently being powered by those environments, those legacy mainframe environments, and just download it, if you will, or transfer it to an open systems Intel or Micron or NVIDIA-based platform. You can't do that. There's a whole bunch of time and work and money involved in rebuilding those applications.
That's right, and I don't want. I don't want to make the mistake and give you the impression that this is going to happen overnight.
Yeah, but
it's something that we need to start. It needs to start now, and we're not going to require anything overnight. Yeah. But
sure,
but just think about the possibilities that if we're able to do that, just in terms of, the most common reasons why to do it. Security, maintenance,
sure,
expense, so forth and so on. But think about the information, Gerard, that will be able to be shared between the legislature and the agencies, between entities such as CPS, Child Protection Services, and DPS, the Department of Public Safety. And not only that, but maybe even between CPS and your local chancery court. So it's the informational exchange and the efficiency of that exchange will help the legislature promulgate better public policy.
Yeah, no doubt. And what we should have done a long time ago is created, of course, what we call data warehouses or data lakes, which would make it easy to access that mountain of information in a usable format using tools that a layperson can apply and utilize. That technology's been around for decades. There's nothing new about that. Where you take
it's just a matter of us getting it done.
Getting it done. That's right.
No question about it. You're exactly right. But it's time for Mississippi to move into the 21st century whenever it comes to our IT infrastructure. Yeah,
no doubt. Now, of course, you've got the ITS data center, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but my company was actually involved in designing and installing all of that infrastructure. That's probably 20 years ago.
Well, yeah,
when they did that.
Yeah, I'm very well aware of that, but we're going to make it optional in terms of the cloud storage through public or private sources.
Agree.
Yeah, and that's what needs to happen. And think about it, okay? You got the ITS cloud storage, but again, just think about the money that we can save if we make Google and AWS and Microsoft compete for that service. Don't even think about or include the expertise that they have to maintain it, but just the reduction in the cost.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so it's called Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS, and
IaaS.
Yeah, they're different categories of that, different services around that broad category. I mean, if you look at AWS, they've got about 80 different specific IaaS services. And again, you got to convert the software, but I would encourage you to really take a look and do some cost modeling on that, because there are a lot of companies now. I just read an article in CIO yesterday about a lot of companies are pulling it back into on-prem because the cost of cloud, moving workloads to the cloud, has actually increased rather substantially. So I'm just telling you, as a person that's been in that industry and helped hundreds of companies with this same process going back to 2000, it's you got to sit down and really do some ciphering and some comparative analysis. But in general, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and ITS is helping us with that.
Yeah.
They're giving us some numbers. The numbers look, and I'll run those by you one day. But
yeah. Sure.
I mean, but not only that, it's obviously the money is a major component, but the expertise and the support system that we would have in place.
No doubt.
But now, in addition, we also need to look into, we've got AWS coming to Madison. We've got another data center, I believe, at Meridian, and
Compass,
and one more that has been announced, I believe, somewhere in the somewhere else. But we need to come up with a strategy on how do we get their synergy, how do we transform that into making these companies locate some of their jobs, Gerard, some of their high-paying jobs also in Mississippi. It's great to have the data centers, but we need to transform that to high-paying jobs in Mississippi.
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of that as far as the jobs that are on site, but there's no doubt that managing and operating data centers is not something that requires the actual human talent to be physically present where the data center is located. In fact, that's actually a bad practice. And so you got to be careful there. There's a whole lot of people behind the scenes that are involved in making sure all that stuff's working like it's supposed to. In fact, they're all over the world.
That's right. That's right. But we're supplying the cheap energy that they need. Okay. Yeah. That's the number. That's
a big
what
part
this
of
is all
it.
about.
Yep.
Mississippi has the space, and they have the cheap energy.
Yeah.
But if we're going to allow them to come to Mississippi, let's put some pressure on them. We don't have anything to lose. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, you want to use our energy and our space? We're giving you all these tax incentives. You locate some of these high-paying jobs in Mississippi.
Sure. I'm all for that. I would just, I'm sure you're aware that you're competing with a lot of other sites in a lot of other states. And, if you put some sort of requirements in there that make it such that it's not cost effective and in their best interest economically, it could be a problem. Just be careful with that. I hear your
caution. Okay, I understand it.
Yeah.
Mississippi can compete with anybody.
No, there's no doubt about it. But when you start, I'm saying when you start instituting requirements like you will put this many people here that are making this kind of stuff, and the other states say, no, you don't have to do that here, and we'll still give you the same rate on land and energy, it could render you uncompetitive.
No, I understand that. I'm not saying mandate anything. I'm just saying, hey, just throw some things out there, maybe in terms of some incentives, and make them, if they're going to locate here, make the CEO, make the higher management personnel come to Mississippi and just spend some time here.
Sure.
What's wrong with that, Gerard? Once they come here, they're going to want to stay.
Yeah, sure. All for it. I think that'd be great. I've been clamoring for increasing our corporate headquarters in the state for 30 years because that, honestly, is where most business emanates from. We got to go, but I appreciate you coming on with us today, Representative Hank Zuber. Thanks.
Okay, Gerard. Have a great weekend.
You too, man. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
We appreciate Representative Hank Zuber for coming on the program, and he shared with me a while back, Rhino, he asked me some questions about it, about this migration, if you will. That's been going on in the country and the world since cloud computing, if you will, advanced from a technology perspective to become more viable. I got to tell you, in the early days, this is what's so fascinating to me about this. When we first built the data center in the Jackson State University East Center, we started out, I think I've told you before, right over here around the corner in my office in Ridgeland, little bitty, about as big as this studio, because there wasn't a whole lot you could do back then. I mean, if you looked at the workloads, use cases, hosting websites, that was a big thing. It's like everybody wanted a website. Remember that? Who doesn't have one now? But in those days, you better get out there and get you a website. Okay, how do I do that? You go hire somebody that can program one for you.
GoDaddy.com.
Yeah, and then it's, okay, well, how do I get it to where everybody can see it? Well, you got to go host it somewhere. And that typically would be done with an internet service provider that provided not only connectivity, but hosting. And then a lot of hosting providers sprung up all over the place. Well, we were one of them, but in the early days, that's pretty much what you could do. Host websites or co-locate customer equipment. I really don't want it here in my shop. I'd like to place this more critical infrastructure that hosts applications that we just got to have up all the time in a hardened facility owned and operated by a third-party data center that's got the connectivity, the security, the backup power, the HVAC, 724 monitoring. I mean, you go down the list of all of what that includes. You don't even hear that term a lot anymore, co-location. Though it still is pretty big, it's just been kind of overshadowed by the more traditional cloud services workloads from AWS and Microsoft. And all of us run around with these phones that are all communicating with somebody's cloud environment somewhere to deliver those applications. Or on your full-size PC. But I remember the old days trying to sell this value proposition. Why don't you let us handle that for you? Oh, no, I couldn't possibly let it go out of my sight down the hall here. Because that's just how people were. They're worried about their data, and I appreciated that. But we used to have to sell them on, I promise, it's okay. It'll be okay. We got it. But you got to earn that trust. And then the other thing that didn't help us during that time period is all the padlocks being placed on the doors of some of these .com type providers because they're going out of business. And that fear was, well, what if something like that happens to you? And then I can't get to my data, right? And we actually had an adjunct service where, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll replicate your data offsite to a third party 500 miles away for a small fee on top of that, so that if something should happen to us, you got your data. Now, that was common back then. Now, most providers today, they've got multiple facilities, and they're already doing that. I mean, so they're guaranteeing you uptime. We call it a service level agreement, SLA. So it's just thinking about how all that's changed, so dramatically since then. But I used to tell those who were concerned about that, had to have it, down the hall. That was typical. And you'd open up some closet, like, oh my gosh, it'd be a rat's nest. You've seen it of equipment just on file cabinets and cables all over the place, like just an accident waiting to happen. And I say, are you comfortable with that? And they kind of looked at it. I said, see, the risk is the janitor inadvertently comes in and bumps something. You're out of business. What about if it's more sinister and they just unplug that server and put it in their trunk and drive away with it? Don't care about the data. They just want to sell the machine. You're out of business. That ain't going to happen with us. That was originally one of the big driving tenets of the value proposition. So there are, no doubt, still lots of workloads being migrated to the cloud. That's what's growing that business every day. People are getting comfortable with companies, we're talking about, with their workloads. And that, by workloads, we just mean various sorts of IT functions, applications, et cetera. Now, almost everybody is consuming their basic email and office applications. That's been around for a while. From Microsoft, Google, others, cloud services providers. That's been around. That's become mainstream. But your more tailored, specialized, customized applications, such as what's needed to run Child Protective Services, you don't buy that off the shelf, and you're not going to go in the Amazon catalog and find, software as a service, Mississippi Child Protective Services. You're not going to find that in the services catalog. What you would find are infrastructure services that could power their specialized application. But as long as it's on a mainframe, the way Representative Zuber said, they're not going to touch that. But if you would convert it, sure, then they've got the IT infrastructure, the compatible platforms. We're stepping aside for a break. Also today we got Kelly Bennett. That's in the next hour at 11:20. We got Fox News and SuperTalk News up next. Stay with us.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio, hour 2 of Middays on this
Friday, y'all.
All right, so the ruling from the Supreme Court this morning on TikTok says the ban can go into effect. And when's that happening? Like Monday? Is that
Sunday.
Right? Sunday, okay.
Sunday.
And, of course, this is essentially punting the issue to President-elect Trump. And he's already said...
Kinda. It's an act of Congress. So
right. I know.
It's going to take another act of Congress to do anything.
Well,
I don't know that there's the appetite to do that. So my educated guess is TikTok is going the way of the dodo.
I'm with you, and I agree with you, and I do on this act of Congress stuff, and I have concerns about the 100-plus executive orders the President-elect has indicated he will execute day one. I think many of those are reversing policies that were also enacted by Congress. And so, but since when has that stopped presidents of recent memory from putting a pen to paper to do stuff, right? And then it ends up at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that. And that may be the case here. Now, there's no doubt lots of stuff can be handled and controlled by the commander-in-chief through executive order. I lean more towards they should have less power unilaterally. I'd like to see the people who were elected by the people have more power. And it's no different than the executive order that Biden just signed, barring drilling, offshore drilling, on however many hundreds of thousands of acres, or is it millions of acres of offshore waters. And he's relying on some 1953 bill that empowers the president. Which one of those wonky staffers figured that one out?
Look. I think you're giving them too much credit.
Okay.
I would believe it was plugged into an AI with a question before I would believe some of these staffers did it. Because have you seen the latest from the progressive staffers of Capitol Hill?
What are they saying?
They sent a letter to all the leadership requesting a 32-hour work week on rotation.
Oh, yeah. I just saw Bernie Sanders on the television here in the studio.
They still want 40 hours of pay,
That's
but
exactly
they only want
right.
to work 32 hours.
He's pushing for it. He says we should be able to do it.
Of course he is. Remember, that's the same guy that got kicked out of a hippie commune because he was too lazy to work. That tells you how lazy the man really is.
Oh, if you looked up in the dictionary an entry that had a photo
of worthless, yeah, it'd have Bernie Sanders right next to it.
I was thinking about the iconic communist symbol, the hammer and sickle. It'd have Sanders. Of course, he would be competing with Warren and Robert Wright for that distinction, right? Golly. Oh, yeah. Businesses, don't worry. They're just going to work 32 hours. And you'll get a break. Oh, sorry, no, you still got to pay him for 40. That's what he wants. Incredible. So, Supreme Court upholds the law. The president-elect says basically he's going to look into it. He's not offered any definitive action that he will take, that he's going to look into it. Stay tuned. More to come. The Dow up 430 points today at the present moment. The NASDAQ is also in the green. Last I checked, it was up a couple hundred points. And that's because I was waiting for the NASDAQ to flash on the screen here. That's because the banks, it's up 300 points. Good day for the NASDAQ. Pretty much just recovering its losses from yesterday, a sell-off there on the high-tech laden exchange, the NASDAQ. But the banks this week, all the big banks have released earnings and all beating expectations, top and bottom line. And the markets like that. And the inflation picture was a bit mixed. Food, energy up, but everything else down, which is weird. But so they kind of feel mixed about that, but still, I think what we're seeing today is a little of that FOMO, fear of missing out. I better get in on this thing because everything sold off yesterday and it depressed the price. Let me go get in. Well, that's a good thing. Lots of money out there.
Even the funny money's up again. It's up over 100.
I see that. Absolutely.
Last I checked, it was 104.
I'm looking at it right now. You're up 5,000 today, 104.
And it was down to, 91 this week?
Sold off earlier this week. That's right. So this is good news. The NASDAQ, now up about 299. And also the 10-year fell a bit as well. And it's amazing how you can watch that relationship. 10-year goes down, market goes up, and that's just because investors feel better about the future economy from an inflation perspective, and bond yields fall, and the markets go in reverse order. That's pretty much every day now, as far as the markets are concerned. It's crazy we've gotten to that point. Wiley Walker from Newton on the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. I know we got a lot to get to with respect to tax reform, and we shall. I am retired and I set up my retirement funds with state taxes considered. I have paid income taxes since 1968. Now you're going to tax my sales taxes on us retirees. What are you going to do to keep us whole? So I would again encourage you, Wiley, to run your numbers. Here, 3 pieces of information you need. How much do you spend on goods that are currently subject to the 7% sales tax rate? And the reason I include that qualification is because don't consider things that are not taxable, such as your house, your insurance, any investments you make or use of your disposable income for investments. Let's see, there was something else I was thinking about. Energy, that's not subject to sales tax. Consider that everything that's presently subject to 7% except groceries. How much do you spend on that, if you could possibly estimate that? And then consider how much do you spend on groceries that would be eligible for the reduced sales tax on groceries. And then how much do you spend on fuel? That's all you got to know. And once you get that figure, it's real simple. The first figure, all non-grocery purchases that are presently subject to sales tax. Again, you have to exclude all the stuff that's not, your mortgage, your rent, your insurance, your energy, exclude purchases of vehicles from that. Everything else, multiply that by 1.5%. Take your groceries, that would be eligible for the reduced rate. And keep in mind that some things that you push through the checkout line at the grocery store, they would not be eligible for the lower rate. Paper products comes to mind, for example, Rhino, that a lot of us buy at the grocery store. I think that's a fairly common purchase. But so you would multiply that by 3%. So that's your savings, a 3% savings on those purchases, a 1.5 increase on the other purchases that we mentioned, the non-grocery items, and then 5% on your fuel. So I just assumed in my math, in my case, I assumed $6,000. I mean, and everybody's different, and I completely get that. But if you assumed a $6,000 and $1,500, $6,000 on the non-groceries, $6,000 on the groceries, and $1,500 on fuel. Now your situation could be different, but you can see the math right there. That's $90 additional tax on the $6,000. I do that right? I think so. Rhino, $90 on $6,000 at 1.5%, and then 3% savings on the grocery purchases. If that's also $6,000, that's $180. And then let's say you spend $1,500 on gas. That's $75. So that's $165 minus $80. That's your total net increase. About $80 a year. 85 to be exact. I do it right in my head there? Okay. So that does
$7 a month.
Yeah. Now, I would suspect, I don't know this for sure, I suspect that probably a lot of folks who are retired spend actually more money on the grocery side of things, less on fuel, and less on the stuff, the non-grocery stuff that's taxed at the new 1.5% rate. So if those numbers change, if you said like $4,000, for example, on non-grocery and $8,000 on grocery and $1,000 on gas. How about that? And we can plug that in, and we'll get to that. Well, we got Kelly Bennett coming up next. We'll get to it after our segment with Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, of course, with SuperTalk Mississippi News. More after the break.
You got a bloody right to say.
Hey, this is Bob.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go.
Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. You are tuned in to Middays. We are live from the Element Wealth studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. What's happening there, Kelly?
Morning, guys.
What is going on?
Happy Friday.
Absolutely.
Well, let's start with the frigid temperatures that are expected to move into Mississippi starting on Sunday night. And this is going to take place across the state, actually. But the greatest chance of impact to travel and possible power outages from a mixture of snow, sleet, and freezing rain according to the National Weather Service, and Jackson will generally be along and southeast of the Natchez Trace Corridor. I thought this was kind of interesting. Just in case your power does go out, the State Department of Health wants you to know if you lose power, but it's for less than 4 hours, the food in your refrigerator will still be safe, and freezers can keep your food safe for up to 48 hours if they're full, 24 hours if they're about half full, which is where mine would be.
Wow.
Because I live alone.
So, in other words, you don't need a refrigerator for a day or so, huh? That's what it sounded like.
I guess you could just put your food out in the snow.
Put it outside, sure. Absolutely. Man, that's so we were just talking about that earlier, Kelly. What's the latest forecast? Just looking at those bands, the pink and the blue and whatever the other color is that represents the various types of wintry precipitation, that it's mostly draped across the southern half of our state.
Yeah, I saw the wind chill on the coast was going to be around 20 or a little less than 20 degrees, which that's pretty concerning. We don't get those kind of temperatures very often on the coast. I think folks in North Mississippi will be much more prepared for this.
Yeah.
Were you guys, I thought I heard you talking about snow in New Orleans.
Yeah, that's what we saw that on the map. Isn't that right? Rhino, it shows whatever the color is, blue, pink. I can't remember anymore. I think it's blue, right? That represents snow.
Yeah, they've got a chance on Tuesday, about a 35% chance.
Of snow, right?
Well,
yeah.
Well,
I have seen snow in South Mississippi.
Man.
In the past. It doesn't happen very often. But you know what cracks me up? I lived in the Northeast for a while. I'm an Army brat, so I've lived all over the place. I've been in snow country.
Yeah.
The people in South Mississippi, when it snows, they get so excited about it. They'll open the door to go look at it. I'm like, dude, you can see it through the window without the cold blast of air.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyway, so that's coming. Everybody prepare for that. Just before I came onto your show, Gerard, I got a press release from Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith's office, and she is celebrating today the signing of a record of decision that clears the way for the construction of this long-sought flood control project for the Yazoo backwater area.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's the story I'm going to be working on here in a minute. That's great news for folks in the Delta.
Yeah, man. It sure is. I know she's been heavily involved in that for quite some time, and this seems like it's been a long time coming. And it's good news there for the state of Mississippi, certainly the Delta. That's great. What else is going on?
We also had some breaking news this morning. The Supreme Court upheld the law that forces TikTok to divest its parent company or be banned. Now, here's next steps. President Biden says he won't be enforcing the ban when it takes effect on January 19th. So that's Sunday. That's going to leave the decision in the hands of President-elect Donald Trump, who's promising to try to save TikTok. Now, in the past, he had been for the ban. He's changed his position on that. That happens. I thought this was really interesting, though. We've got a Mississippi TikTok creator by the name of Topher. He's also a rapper and entrepreneur. This guy has really done his homework, and he opposes the ban, and here's why.
Well, for two reasons. The first reason being that it's a vital source of income for me and my family. And two, when it comes to my First Amendment right, as a veteran, I served in the armed forces to procure these rights to make sure that they remain, protected.
And here's something you might not think about, but Topher has. He's told us that TikTok added $24 billion to the U.S. GDP in 2023.
We have small businesses that credit, over 60% of small businesses that credit TikTok for the growth. And we're seeing these jobs. I think TikTok right now is responsible for over 250,000 jobs.
So you're not just talking about banning an app. You're talking about people's livelihoods.
Oh, it's a lot of commerce.
Gigs.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of people have built businesses around the platform, and they're benefiting from those. And there are a lot of jobs that have been created as a result. So it would be very disruptive, no doubt.
In his final days in office, you got President Biden moving to ban offshore oil and gas drilling in most U.S. coastal waters. I heard you mention this earlier. This move was seen by a lot of people as an effort to block incoming President Donald Trump from expanding offshore drilling and fulfilling his promise to unleash American energy. Remember how Trump kept saying, drill, drill, drill? What's the first thing you will do when you take office? Drill, drill, drill. Well, Philip Chambly, the executive director of the Mississippi Petroleum Marketers Association, talked about this.
One of the things that's unusual about this particular act is the fact the way, as I understand it, it's going to take literally an act of Congress to reverse it.
Yeah, they found a way to manage that. So Trump is expected to enact executive orders aimed at boosting U.S. oil and gas production on his first day in office. Here's how he could do it. He could direct the Energy Department to start approving new permits for LNG terminals immediately through an executive order. That would end a temporary pause the Biden administration instituted in January of 2024, so the Energy Department can study the impacts of more LNG exports on the economy, national security, other climate crisis. I think a lot of folks are just ready for Trump to get in and see some of these Biden administration policies disappear.
Yeah, and that's what I think are the first set of executive orders going to consist of, or just rolling back those issued under President Biden, which were many of those were a reversal of Trump's from his first term.
They're saying on his first day in office, Trump is expected to sign around 100 executive orders, so it'll be interesting to see those as they come down.
It totally is. So what about back home here in the state of Mississippi? What's going on there? HB 1.
Okay. Reading this bill, I know you have like hours to talk about what this bill does. In the newsroom, we've got 60 seconds to try to lay this puppy out, and there's so much in this bill.
Yeah.
But I think one of the big rumors that I'd like to lay to rest is the fact that it would increase your property taxes. So Representative Trey Lamar, who is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, told us that is absolutely not going to happen.
In fact, it could encourage property taxes to be reduced. That's another beauty, just a really delightful part of this plan, because if, for instance, let's say the city of Oxford decides that, you know what, we're doing pretty good in Oxford, we'd like some extra money, but we don't quite need $2.1 million in extra money, so we can do something with 1.5, and let's take 600,000 of that and give it back as a property tax reduction. There could be cities that would have the option to do that, or they may have real needs. They may need a new fire department, more policemen on staff. It gives the cities the flexibility to do some of those things with their budgets.
Now, the argument against House Bill 1, which is the, let's call it sweeping tax reform.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yep.
There's so much to it. The argument against it is that all this federal COVID money, the helicopter money, as I've heard you refer to it, is coming to an end. So there are concerns about how this is really going to impact the state budget. But like you've said, it's over a 10-year period. That's a lot of math. That is like, it hurts my head, math.
Yeah. It's fun. I love it, of course. Love to do all the math.
I'm glad you do. I like the English. I'm a writer, not a mathematician.
Well, that's what makes the world go round. Everybody's got their skills and their strengths. And but this one, you got to use a little brain power in the math category. Unfortunately, as you know, taxes are just complicated. We've made them complicated, and that didn't happen yesterday. It's been going on for since we've been doing taxes, honestly. Well, it will be interesting for sure, and I know we'll be talking to you some more during the session. I think once we get past this tax legislation, a whole lot more is on the table we'll be talking about. But, Kelly, always good to see you. Have a great weekend.
And don't forget, if you want details on these stories, just go to supertalk.fm.
Fantastic. Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, everyone. Coming right back. We got a lot more to talk about on Middays. Stay with us.
Everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much love drives a man insane. You broke my will, what a thrill. Goodness, your records just quitting balls of fire. I let the love all I thought it was funny. You came along and you moved me, honey. I changed my mind, looking fine. Goodness gracious, quitting balls of fire. You kiss me, baby. Ooh, it feels good. Hold me, baby. Girl, just let me love you like a...
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. The Dow now in the green, 478. By the way, Rhino just informed that the Laken-Riley Act, we discussed that yesterday, passed the House, but unfortunately there were a number of Democrats who voted against the measure. All Republicans voted for it. Goes over to the Senate, requires 60 votes to break through the filibuster to get it to the president's desk for signature. You just informed us it was 61-35.
Yeah,
right?
It's advanced with a vote of 61-35. The final vote to pass the bill will likely be held on Monday.
Okay. Awesome. So that's a good thing. All right. Well, the question is, what in the heck happened to the other 35? I mean, why were the Democrats voting against that? Who would say in their right mind, yeah, we need to vote against this? All it really
My
does.
presumption yesterday was a bit off. My presumption yesterday was they would argue it was already law.
Yeah.
Seems like their arguments are more along the lines of, well, you're just arresting them because they're here illegally. And that shouldn't be against the law.
Yeah. Exactly. We already have law in place for that.
Asinine.
Well, we already have laws, already in place to secure the border, but we don't seem to enforce those over the last 4 years. What's different? Which, if we had, this incident wouldn't have happened. This beautiful young lady would be alive today. Man, oh man. No mention of that, by the way, by Joe Biden in his final interview yesterday. He's still trying to convince the public he was fantastic. But have you seen the polls on his, I don't want to call it approval, his lack thereof approval? I mean, they are dismal. Has Biden made the economy better or worse? In July of 22, 17 said better. August 23, 25% said better. Today, 28% worse. This is the telling number. 55% in 22 said worse. August 23, 52%. Now 52%. So more than half the country thinks he made their economic situation worse. How in the world could you log that as success? That's incredible. 18% present day said don't know. No, or no difference. Okay. Well, so no improvement, no harm. But still, 52% said, yeah, not a good thing. We just also learned that the inauguration has been moved indoors. So I'm trying to find out if my tickets made the cut. It is going to be held at the, what's the name of the facility there?
Well, the swearing-in ceremony will still be held at the Capitol. It'll just be held in the Capitol Rotunda, similar to Reagan's inauguration.
As opposed to on the steps there.
As opposed to on the steps with the mall in view and all that. And there are discussions being had currently as to whether or not the Capital One Arena, I believe it is available for an event on that Monday. I believe Trump has a rally scheduled in that same arena on Sunday.
That's right, yeah.
So it would be, instead of having the parade and the inauguration on the steps and all that, it would be a much smaller ceremony in the Capitol Rotunda and then potentially another rally-like event in lieu of the parade in the Capital One Arena.
Yeah. Right. So,
although there are still some debates on whether or not the parade can still continue, they're just moving the crowd Or taking the crowd out of it.
Man, oh man. That's really going to be something. Man, oh man. So, all right. So before we went to break, I gotta make sure I'm doing this right. Looking at my pencil math here, we were talking about a reasonable question, and you know, the retired folks in our state whose income, retirement income, is presently exempt from income taxes, of course, naturally react to this tax legislation that passed our House yesterday with the question, what does this do for me? You guys are going to raise the sales taxes on some things, lower it on some things. Does this mean my taxes are, overall tax burden's going up because I'm not getting any benefit from elimination of the income tax? That's totally true. I get it. So I just did some quick math on that, assuming, and what I pointed out is you got to look at three pieces of data. How much do you spend on stuff subject to the new 8.5% when implemented? Sales tax, that would be everything except groceries that are taxed at a lower rate, and all those products and services you purchase that are either not taxed currently for sales tax purposes or taxed at a lower rate. The most prominent example, I would say, would be vehicles, which are taxed at a lower rate. And then you got to look at fuel, because we have a new sales tax that would apply to fuel purchases, 5% of the purchase. And I just did some quick assumption, 6,000. Maybe it was 8,000 I used, I think. But it doesn't really matter. Suppose you spent 6,000 on stuff that's now going to be taxed at the 8.5%, 6,000 on groceries, 1,500 on gas. And that nets out. The way I did it, Rhino, I may have used 8,000 on the first category. That nets out, according to my math, about a $15 savings is what I come up with. $15 a year savings. So it's pretty much a wash. You're going to pay $90 more on the non-grocery stuff, $180 less with a 3% savings at $6,000 on the grocery stuff, and $75 more on fuel. 15. Now, if you kind of change the numbers up a little bit, you spend $4,000 on the stuff subject to the higher 8.5% rate, $8,000 on groceries, $1,000 on gas, then according to my math, you'd get a $130 a year benefit. So I think the reality is, if you just plugged in different scenarios, that it's pretty much a wash. Slight benefit. Maybe a few people would have a slight increase, but I still believe the vast majority of those on fixed income in retirement, meaning they don't have a lot of outside investment income. And when I said this on my social media, I just want to make sure people understood any income, even while you're retired, that's not as defined as retirement income, Social Security, pensions, 401k, etc., that's exempt from tax. If you have, say, investments in stocks or bonds and you produce income, derive income from those, that's still taxable, even though you're retired. And I was told respectfully by someone, I think this was on the PERS site, that most people that are retired don't have capital gains, don't have dividends, don't have interest income. Okay, fair enough. So I'm assuming all their income is totally exempt from taxes. Therefore, reducing or eliminating the income tax doesn't help them in that category. But they get an increase on the non-grocery stuff, a decrease on the grocery stuff, an increase on fuel. You could run all kinds of different scenarios. I still say for the vast majority of Mississippians that are retired and have these circumstances, it's pretty close to a wash. You know, within $100 one way or another, I think it's going to be the typical case. So that's the answer that was posed by Wiley Walker from Newton. I hope, Wiley, we answered your question there. Don't forget the increase in cost of goods because of the increase in fuel tax. Well, I think that's negligible, and I'm not sure that would be the case depending on where stuff is being shipped from. So presently, because we looked it up, Rhino, the second lowest fuel tax currently in the country, right?
Behind Alaska.
Only Alaska. And I think that's because for some reason I'm pretty sure that when you and I were discussing this like 3 years ago, we were third or fourth. But I think what's happened since then, we got leapfrogged by other states that have raised their fuel taxes, right? Since then, we haven't touched ours since 87. Therefore, we moved like from fourth or fifth lowest down to second lowest. Nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is shippers are buying fuel all over the place. And so I don't know how much of what they buy here figures into what we all buy in terms of products in the Magnolia State. We're stepping aside for a break. We're going to come right back with more, final segment of Hour 2, and then a full hour of Middays after.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
With you in the Element Wealth studio. So in the last segment, I just want to clarify this for everyone. You really got to look at this holistically, and what I mean by that is you got to consider all these various taxes that hit you individually.
Here's a good example of someone that just did the numbers on their own.
Okay. From
the 901 on the C-Spire text line, as a retired old man who owns one rental property, crunching the numbers, I take a $7 a month hit. Big whoop.
Okay.
Bring it.
And you and I were just talking about that off the air a minute ago, and that's the point we're trying to make. So, and where I was going with that is I made the statement that it's a wash a little bit one way or another, from zero. If you think of a number line, a little bit down, a little bit up, I say that it's so close to the zero, it's pretty much a wash. I'm talking about, let me make this clear, retired people whose income is exempt from income taxes. Retired people. Let me say that again. Retired people. With respect to people working and paying income taxes, this is not a wash. This is a significant gain tax cut once fully implemented. And even along the way, depending on your situation. And again, that's by just netting the value of the savings on your income tax as it's being phased out with the slight increase on non-grocery items, decrease on grocery items, which also gets phased out over time, but starts out at a lower rate, day one, and then the sales tax on fuel. You got a net, all four categories. For people who are paying income taxes, meaning they're working, there's no doubt you'd be hard-pressed to find a single case where their tax bill overall, combining, netting those four categories, does not go down. Rhino, the only situation where that's not the case is if you got a bunch of cash sitting in the bank and you go spend more, like a lot more, than you make. Does that make sense? Because if you do that, and that assumes you're spending it on stuff subject to the higher sales tax rate, and I don't want to confuse people. I apologize for even saying that. Again, because I know it could be confusing. None of us, I shouldn't say none of us, a scant few people in our state spend more than they make. You agree? A scant few. Those would be people, again, that have cash available to spend that exceeds the income they take in, be it investment income or wage-based, employment-based income, both of which, by the way, are subject to income taxes, which would also be phased out. So, I want to be clear. The wash that I mentioned, we're talking about retired folks. And I know they're concerned because they're saying, I don't pay taxes on my income, but it looks like I'm going to pay more of what's these other...
They don't pay taxes on their retirement income.
Retirement income, thank you. And we made that point earlier.
As a greeter at the Wally World, you're still paying income tax on that check, which you would not after this bill is fully enacted.
That's right. Completely agree. And the same thing applies if you derive some income from your investments. So, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't mind saying that's where my income comes from. But I worked my butt off, like a lot of people say, for a long time. Unfortunately, that income's taxed. I don't get a break on that because the vast majority of my income comes from investments. That's what I work for, built a business for. That's subject to tax. As this income tax gets phased out, I would receive a net benefit from that. I've done the math on that. Now, my income from, as you point out, from this employment is subject to tax, income tax, just like everybody else is working. I'm just a waged employee. But that would go away from a state perspective. You know, and even after we layer on this 5% sales tax on fuel, because our excise tax on fuel, which is the primary source of revenue in states for transportation infrastructure, it's excise tax. And just the difference is that's a set amount per quantity, in this case, gallon. Sales tax is a percentage of the purchase. And in Mississippi, even if we add 5% sales tax on fuel purchases, because our excise tax, we just learned and has been updated a bit, is the second lowest in the country. It ranks 49th because it's been level since 1987. We haven't increased it. Even adding the sales tax proposed in HB 1 still puts us near the bottom. We still may be like 49th even after we add this. 48th at a minimum, I'm thinking, looking at the next in line, but very close to the bottom in terms of taxes on fuel. The same by adding the 1.5% sales tax on non-grocery items. We're still lower than the average of the states around us, which sit around 9.5%. We're a full percent lower. I hope we take all that into consideration. It does mean Mississippi actually is very responsible and very frugal with its spending, is the way I take that. Coming right back with another hour of middays.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
A little wheel in the sky there, bumping us into hour 3 of Middays on this
Friday, y'all.
All right, man. We're back with you. So, state of Mississippi, we pay 18.7 cents, I think, is what our fuel excise tax is. Again, that levied on each gallon of gas purchased, including, it's a little different on diesel, or is it the same? I can't remember.
I think off-road diesel's different.
A little lower, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I recall. Okay. So I haven't done the math yet, but I believe that, just eyeballing it, once we layer on the 5% sales tax that is contemplated in this bill, HB 1, that passed the House yesterday, we would still rank, if not next to last, at 49th, maybe move up a notch to 48th or something. And Again, depends on how much you buy, because what makes this a little difficult and a little different in the calculation, not difficult, is that it depends on the value of what you buy. And, of course, the price of gas is volatile. And so, because the excise tax is static, it doesn't matter what the price of gas is per gallon, if you will. That price includes that 18.7 cents per gallon, no matter what the raw cost of the fuel is before you layer on the excise tax. And then with respect to a sales tax, depends on how much you buy, because it's 5% of the purchase price. But just kind of eyeballing it, I think it still puts us very near the bottom, certainly in the bottom 2 or 3, and that's significant. That's with this 5% sales tax, new sales tax. And I certainly understand. Everybody looks at that as, wow, you're raising my taxes. But you got to think about and consider the other categories where taxes are going down, specifically groceries and income tax. That's the big thing that you got to keep in mind, is that income taxes. I shared the typical situation the other day. It's probably worth repeating, of a taxpayer who makes $60,000 a year. I just picked that as a figure. $60,000 individual taxpayer, and buys, let's see, make sure I've got the example I used, I share with you correctly. Yeah, buys $8,000 of non-grocery items, $6,000 of groceries, spends $1,500 on fuel once fully implemented. That's a net savings to the $60,000 a year individual taxpayer of $1,653. Yes, they're paying $120 more for non-grocery purchases, but they're saving $180 in this scenario on grocery purchases. Yes, they're paying $75 more for fuel, but they're no longer paying $1,668 of income taxes. That's the big figure there, $1,668, and this is for a $60,000 a year taxpayer. That'd be gross taxable wages. Now, of course, you get the standard deduction, the personal exemption, and then the first $10,000 are not taxable. I figured all that in to compute the full tax liability of $1,668. Again, net savings in that scenario, $1,653. I would say that's meaningful to any taxpayer. It's a net savings. Now, if you continue to scale up the income ladder there, you're going to have more savings. Because I think it's fair to say that there's not a direct relationship to spending necessarily, spending on taxable goods. Let's put it that way. Just because your income is increased. I would say that when your income increases, a lot of people perhaps rent a bigger apartment, more expensive apartment, buy a bigger house, buy a more expensive car. Well, none of that matters in this, because none of that's subject to tax. Any tax increases or tax changes, more importantly, except the income, which no longer is being taxed, and that's significant. So, let's see. I'm back at work, says Darren in Jackson, after a long illness since July of last year. Just wanted y'all to know that I still listen to Super Talk every day that I could. Thanks for being a voice of reason. Well, Darren, first, we're glad you're better and you're back at work. And second, thank you so much for the kind words and certainly for tuning into the program. Will the gas pumps be able to update to calculate this? Will the stations have to pony up big money for an upgrade? You know, it's all software and automated, and numerous other states also tack on a sales tax. I don't think this is anything, honestly. This is some software configuration that could probably be done remotely.
Considering two of the largest states, California and New York, have sales tax added to the fuel cost.
Yes.
I think because they have the people that manufacture gas pumps would not want to exclude themselves from the California and New York markets by not being able to do that.
More cars in California than a bunch of other states combined is the reality. So, yeah, it's a great point. And they've had, as far as I can remember, sales taxes for a whole long time, in addition to an excise tax. So their excise tax, just for comparative purposes, 69 cents roughly, compared to our 18 and change. 50 cents more per gallon. That's why you always see the reports, Gas Buddy and so forth, of the average price per gallon and across the states. And then you also see the highest and the lowest, and typically it's California in the highest category, and either Mississippi or Oklahoma in the lowest category. So we already benefit from low gas. Some of that's because of where we're located with respect to shipping, but a big part of it's because our taxes on fuel are already very low. We just shared that with you that we're 49th presently. So the average gas tax, by the way, excise tax, is about 30 cents. We're well below the average. 23 states have higher and 27 have lower. We're, of course, among the lower. So I think that's a good thing. But it's a good question. How is this fair to fixed income retirees? I'm not sure exactly what that means. We've been through the examples for you, and I hope that makes sense. I mean, the fact that you're probably going to incur a very small increase, maybe, but I think most retirees, the vast majority, will receive a small decrease. So I'm not sure what's meant by fair. What is already makes this hard is that retirees don't pay income taxes in the state of Mississippi. So it's a situation where, how do you improve that? It's already zero. It's already zero. The goal here is to implement policies, in this case tax policies, that are conducive to economic growth. Besides, of course, allowing people, working people, to keep more of what they earn. Of course, that's paramount. But as per our discussion with Representative Zuber earlier, it's becoming very competitive, which is great among the states for all this massive investment going on, particularly in technology, all being driven by the explosion of artificial intelligence and this data center build-out. We shared before that Jensen Huang, the CEO of and co-founder of NVIDIA, who makes the chips that are driving this AI revolution, he predicts, based on his discussions with his customers, who are the big data center operators, Amazon, Oracle, Microsoft, Meta, Google, he predicts $2 trillion, mind-boggling, of investment in new data center build-out between now and 27. Mississippi is already benefiting from that explosion, from that development, with AWS coming to Madison, Compass going to Lauderdale County, and I believe you're going to see more. I have no doubt about that. Well, one of the things we need to address is to attract industry like this, to keep more of our talented, bright young people, is to provide them employment opportunities, and this is going to stimulate that. I have zero doubt about that. Totally confident of that. We are poised to become a technology juggernaut. We've got to make sure that our tax and regulatory framework is conducive and compete to investment and competes with other states who are also vying for the same massive investment. This is how we address the state's most critical challenges. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Here comes the thunder.
At Fillmore Buick,
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
MidDays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. So the same person on our C-Spire text line, 601-879-4395, says retirees will pay more and more in tax due to inflation while having no increase in income. Well, not true, because when you consider the traditional sources of retirement income, that would be Social Security. If you're a state or a public sector employee in Mississippi, you would be receiving benefits from PERS. Both of those are adjusted for inflation. Actually, PERS is adjusted whether there's any inflation or not. That's one of the reasons that it's teetering on insolvency, because of the compounded cost of living adjustment that has absolutely no relationship to inflation. In fact, if we experienced deflation, which is not likely, but a lot of people expect that to happen, I would say. If the cost of living decreased and you're a member of PERS, your PERS benefits increase no matter what, because it's not tied to that. Now, I get it. That's the law. And I believe the state has an obligation to honor the statutes. And I've yet to hear a lawmaker who's disagreed with that position. In fact, quite the opposite. They've asserted, no, the state has to make that good. But that's a different matter. That's a legal obligation versus what really is economically viable. And now what we see with a $25 billion unfunded liability in the program, that really drove the insolvency. It's not really insolvent, but it's not stable. How about that? It's not close to being insolvent. Please erase that. My apologies for that. It could get there if some action's not taken. Just like Social Security. It's fine. It can pay its benefits today. But if we don't do something about Social Security and Medicare, it won't be able to in a few years. That's just mathematical fact. And same thing would be the case with PERS. If we don't take some action, it will eventually reach a point where it can't meet its obligations, and nobody wants that to happen. Nobody wants that to happen. And this program addresses that. We cannot count on Social Security. Not everyone has PERS. Social Security law provides for a cost of living adjustment. It's tied to the CPI, which is the way PERS ought to be. The chances of the United States Congress and President changing that provision are less than slim to none. It's not going to happen. I understand not everyone is on PERS. I get it. I would just ask you again to look at your personal situation. If you want me to calculate it for you, and I've got your phone number but not your name, send me your data, and I'll do it for you. And won't tell. I don't have your ID anyhow, so I couldn't disclose your identity. But if you want to send me, and I don't need your income. All I need is how much you spend on non-grocery, how much you spend on grocery, how much you spend on fuel. We can run that easy and tell you the net effect. Every retiree can do that same exercise, Rhino. You're with me on that, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
That would allow you to see how does this affect me. If you're currently working and paying state income taxes, you got to add the additional dimension, which is how much am I paying on income taxes? Now, I don't know about you guys, but if the government says, look, you're going to have to pay $75 more for fuel with the 5% sales tax, but in exchange for that, you're going to get to keep $2,000 a year of income taxes. All those who think that is something they wouldn't support and wouldn't favor, please let me know. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. You're going to get $2,000 more in exchange for paying $75. You're following me on that. $1,925 net benefit. Last I checked, that's what, $165, $70 a month? That's something you can do some things with, right? I think everybody out there would say, yeah, I could use $160, $175 a month. So that's what we're talking about here. And I'm sympathetic. I'm empathetic with the retired folks. I really am. I just want them to look at it and get the math right. That's all I'm saying. Just don't just jump to a conclusion because you see, oh my gosh, they're raising the sales tax on fuel or implementing a sales tax on fuel, raising the sales tax on non-grocery items, reducing the sales tax on grocery items, you really do have to understand the details there, apply the percentages, and compute the net effect.
Do you want me to be the bad guy and ask the mean question?
Sure. You and I have already talked about this. Go ahead.
If you don't like this plan, what do you want, retirees of Mississippi?
And I did share that with you on the break. I'll admit it. I'm at that point as well. Like, what exactly do you want? And if you say I want no change, then and I'm just kind of speculating that may be what you say. You indicated that, I think. And if that's the case, then understand that we're at risk of being rendered uncompetitive with the other states who are looking strongly at implementing similar programs. That's the problem that we face. And that's important if we have any interest in growing the state's economy and creating more opportunity. I, for one, am tired of paying a bunch of taxes to run our fantastic universities, only to see all the graduates exit the state, the way I always describe it is, before the ink's dry on their diploma. We're not getting any return on that investment. We're being irresponsible from a fiduciary perspective by not creating an environment that generates the jobs that they can work, stay here, contribute to society in our state. We're subsidizing the other states. They're getting our talent. That's the most precious thing we have, man. People, productive people, young productive people that work for a long time, that innovate, create, have families, buy houses and cars and stuff. Man, that's what we got to fix. And this, I think, is an element of that. These policies set us apart and certainly put us on a level playing field, and that's my fear if we don't do anything.
The question now, or the statement now, is retirees have right to ask questions to ensure financial future. Retirees paid their income tax.
Well, first of all, I completely agree, but
when we give you the answer and you just don't like the answer,
I don't know else to tell you. And you absolutely have the right to ask questions. You absolutely have the right to be concerned, and we try to help you understand what the net impact is to you. And I would invite you, once again, do it again. Go through this exercise. I've 3 key data elements you need. How much you spend on non-grocery stuff, groceries, and gas. And share it with us. We'll do the math for you. And I don't know about this idea of, we paid our income tax. Well, so I would ask you this. If Elon Musk were to retire today, should he be exempt from all income taxes? He'd be a retiree, right? He paid more than the state of Mississippi's budget last year. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
The Mississippians paid $2 billion of income taxes last year. Elon Musk paid 11 by himself. Should we exempt him? He's retired. Good grief. If anybody's earned the right to say, I don't want to pay anymore, I've already paid a lot, I would think $11 billion would fit that category. That's more than everybody in the state of Mississippi paid combined by 5. So I hear you, but I know I'm being devil's advocate in that respect, but you're focused on just a certain category, and that's fine. And that's what I'm trying to help you understand, is how to calculate the impact on that more typical category. I appreciate the fact that Elon Musk is not typical. I'm not typical. I'm not in Elon Musk world by any stretch, but I don't rely on what little retirement income I get. That's exempt, by the way, from income taxes. But I pay income taxes on the rest of it. And I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about my kids and my grandkids. I'll have to say here, I agree with Thomas in this respect. Now, that doesn't mean I want retirees to have to pay some sort of tax penalty for others. That's why I'm saying you got to do the math, man. It really is de minimis. And if you're a PERS retiree even if you're paying slightly more once you do this net calculation, your PERS increase easily covers that. And then some, right? Just in that math. And I know someone asked earlier about is the problem with PERS. Yeah, Brandon from Boonville, the 13 check. There's a number of problems in the PERS financial model. It's not the 13th check per se. It's the way that cost of living adjustments are calculated, which started nearly 30 years ago. That is one of the contributing factors. But I could go through a long list. By the way, if you want to check out the article I wrote about a year and a half ago on that, it gets into those details. Coming right back.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I may look like a city slicker shining up through my shoes. Underneath, I'm just a cotton picker, picking out a mess of blues. Show me where I start, find a horse and cart. I'm just a country boy at heart.
Ricky Skaggs. I don't know if we've ever played that one, have we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, we're back with you in the Element Well studio. How's Alabama's fuel taxes done is a question. I think it's similar to ours, is it not, Rhino? I think when I looked at it, it's just an excise tax per gallon.
Yeah, it's 30 cents a gallon.
Yeah, 30 cents. And we're 18.7, I believe?
18.4.
18.4. Thank you.
18 with a 0.4 added for environmental something.
Okay. So theirs is 11.6 cents higher per gallon. Louisiana, 20.93, couple of cents. Arkansas, 25, roughly 7 cents. Tennessee, 27, roughly 9 cents, 27.4, exactly 9 cents. So, neighboring states all have higher gas taxes, even when we apply this 5%. For most people, again, it depends on how much you purchase, because it's 5% and not a 5-cent excise tax. You can't just tack on 5 cents to our 18 and say, yeah, that's the new gas tax. And that's not how it works. And that's the purpose of a sales tax. Some states, as you know, like California, have a sales tax on top of their 61-cent excise tax. Insanity. That's why gas is right now $5 a gallon in California. So that's, I hope that answers the question. Tim and McGee says the thing is that if they put the majority of the gas tax to roads, I'm all for it, because a lot of Mississippians also pay gas tax. Well, and that's the purpose of this, Tim. Just so you'll know, let's be clear about that. The 5% sales tax on fuel is dedicated to the state highway fund. It would be additional monies. It's estimated to generate about $400 million a year, but keep in mind, we're shifting the way lottery proceeds are distributed. That would be a loss of 80. So if the $400 million estimate is correct, that's a net increase of $320 million to the state highway fund. As you heard Executive Director Brad White of the Mississippi Department of Transportation, if you caught that interview earlier in the week, he discussed the fact that we do miss out on federal funds because we don't have this recurring revenue stream needed that the federal government requires to approve grants and funding for various projects within the state, capacity projects. And this would allow us to tap more federal funds. So you have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, we're going to send $320 million more to the Department of Transportation, but we're going to receive from the federal government considerably more money. So the net effect to the Department of Transportation is more than just that $320 million. There's some calculations on that somewhere right now. I don't remember the figure, but it's significant. Would be a significant increase in overall funding to DOTD as a result of the two. On the C Spire text line, consumption, you use it, you pay for it the way taxes should be. Don't tax work. And that's the purpose here, and I agree. Brian from Tupelo, off-road tax 0.0625. Okay, yep, got it. Thank you. I'm so happy to know that all the drug dealers in the state of Mississippi will be allowed to participate in the tax system in our state. Right. They're actually technically supposed to report their income based on law. They don't, of course. But you're right. And there is a big underground economy. It's absolutely true. We miss out on a lot of income taxes. I have said before, I think that's one of the reasons our labor participation rate, which I have zero confidence in as far as the number as calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is because we have a significant cash, so-called underground economy. A lot of people who don't have bank accounts, etc. Yeah, Brian and Madison, the inauguration moved indoors. Does that affect your ability to view or attend? We literally were just informed to call a number to find out. We don't have any details yet. I'm hoping I still get to attend at the basketball facility there. It's the Capital One Arena. Is that what you called it, Rhino?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's where the Wizards play. I don't know what the capacity is, 20,000 or so. That's, of course, a whole lot less than would normally attend an inauguration. So it just depends on whether or not my tickets make the cut. Not sure. Trying to find out. I am going to the ball. No, I got that wired up and confirmed. The Liberty Ball Monday night. That ought to be a lot of fun. One of the state reps in support of HB1 may consider putting a formula spreadsheet online for people to get real estimates. I've actually suggested that, and that is a great suggestion as well, that we ought to create a model that would allow people to go in and enter their information and see what it means to them. But in the meantime, if you want to share your information, if we have your name in the text line, we won't tell anybody. If we don't, of course, we don't know who you are unless you tell us in some other way. We'll run the numbers and see what it comes up with. You know, I built a model when all this was going on a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I think, and for that purpose, as a matter of fact, because it was similar. That was the first bill the House drafted that Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, at the time, championed, and it was a very similar model. Phase out the income tax, increase sales taxes, decrease the grocery tax. It did not have a fuel tax component. I think that's gotten a great deal more attention, Rhino, because our transportation commissioners, our executive director, Brad White, have pointed out that we're losing out on a lot of money from the federal government because we can't get them comfortable with the revenue the state is providing sufficient to receive these grants for road projects in our state. Let's see what else we got here. How would the electric cars play into this? We already have a fee that's imposed on electric cars. I believe it's on an annual basis. Can't remember what the fee is, but in the state of Mississippi, I bet that fee, when you tell me, I'm going to guess it's probably more than the sales tax on fuel for most people. What is it?
Annual fee of $150 for all EVs and $75 for plug-in hybrid EVs.
That means you'd have to spend $250 a month on gas, right? 5%, $3,000 to equal that. You see what I'm saying? So, no, not everyone can ride in the wagon. Somebody's got to pull it. We're second and lowest in the country behind Arkansas for cost of living, also on the C Spire tax line. Mike from Boonville, hope we answered your question about EVs. That was enacted, Rhino, 2-3 years ago, that EV annual fee? I remember the legislature addressing that 2 or 3 years ago. All of our best and brightest leave the state, shut down the universities. That will save the state a lot of money, says Silas in Meridian. Well, of course, you know, Silas, generalizing and exaggerating a bit there, but also keep in mind a tremendous amount of research that benefits society's done in these universities as well. The point is, I'm just looking for ways to keep those people in our state. And keep in mind, many of them come from out of state as well. You have to bear that in mind, that attend our universities, and they typically return back home. That's understandable.
Yeah, it was 2020 when the EV tax was added.
Okay.
Went into effect July 1, 2021.
Okay, got you. While the fact of Social Security paying 1 month behind, a month a year, I've heard no one on the air address the fact that 52-week year, there are actually 13 30-day months a year. This means that people on fixed incomes need to consider and plan out a budget. 10 months income to last through 13. Yeah, I don't think it exactly works out, but I hear what you're saying. I spend around $500 a month on gas, says Jason in Starkville. Well, under this program, your taxes would go up $25. Oh, $500 a month a gas. Okay, $6,000 is what you sent. That's a lot. $500 is a lot. So, Jason, do you use your vehicle for some sort of work other than just commuting to your workplace? Because that's a lot. $6,000 a year, I think that's an anomaly, I would say. You would agree with that, Rhino? $600 to $500 a month? I don't think that's typical, average.
I don't think I've ever spent that much, but I'm not typical.
Yeah. But nonetheless, if you're spending that much, that means you're using the roads a lot, too. And it is a usage tax is the one way to look at that. You use it more, you pay more. So that would be $300 a year. Larry Mize, my representative, told me cities and towns would receive 15% more money back than they were getting with this new tax bill. Yeah, that's a good question. Somebody else asked about, let's see, somewhere down here, Rhino, how would this affect the cities and the municipalities and the counties? And on the other side of the break, we'll address that. But the bottom line is, under this legislation, the revenue they receive would actually increase slightly. Coming right back.
Hello, I'm Sean.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk Mississippi.
All right, we're back in the Element Well studio. Final segment here of Middays. Somebody said that they offer me pennies on the dollar for my heated vest since we're going to be inside. I'm waiting to find out if my ticket's made the cut. Hoping so. And I'll be able to be part, at least, of some of the inauguration activities. It's my understanding is we're going to have in the Capital One Arena there access to live streaming of the swearing-in ceremonies and the speech remarks, and then the president is scheduled to come over to the arena there and join us. And the parade, I think, is going to be taking place as part of that as well. So, still, folks, I get it, that are retired or complaining. And I don't want to say complaining. That's probably a little strong, but at least expressing their concerns. And I would say,
I feel like the vast majority of concerns are unfounded because they simply don't want to do the math.
And agree. And we had somebody, Rhino, that said, yeah, I did the math, and this isn't even as much as a six-pack of beer or something to me. And that's my point that we try to hammer today, is that I think you'll find that it's little change one way or another, honestly. Little change. And so one point's made is that, okay, we worked all our lives and we paid taxes, and therefore we had less money to invest to build our nest egg for our retirement years. and that people working now are going to get ahead because they got more money. I mean,
your houses also cost less than what a car costs now.
Yeah, I mean, you can make. I agree, and you can
the cost of tuition costs what a book costs now.
All sorts of similar arguments that we could counter with, just like you did, all day long. I'm going to make the point again that the purpose here is to allow working people to keep more of their money, to grow the state's economy, to make us more attractive for business formation and investment, to grow the state's economy. And my goal is to get us off the bottom of every meaningful economic metric. I'm tired of being 50th, and I hope you are too. And I think this is a key element from a policy perspective to climbing that economic ladder. And if you look at almost everything, it cannot be refuted. Like it or not, it's tied to money. It's just tied to prosperity. And the reason we enjoy such a phenomenal lifestyle in this country, it's 100% because of rugged individualism and the freedoms that our founding and our core systems allowed, which drove innovation, which made us all richer. You can't convince me that people today in general are way richer and have a way better lifestyle than 40, 50 years ago. If they don't, it's because somehow they slipped through and they simply did not take advantage of and participate in all the opportunities this country provides. And you could almost always trace that back to a dysfunctional home life. Now they want to tell you, oh, it's the system, it's the rich people that block me from participating and
it's because the left has convinced themselves that if you gave every single person the same exact education, opportunities, and income, that outcomes would be universally the same.
Yeah.
They refuse to admit that there are differences among people, there are differences among genders, there are differences among any way you want to slice humanity. There are differences. It exists. Just because you want to live in La La Land where it doesn't exist doesn't mean that's reality.
I agree. And I don't think you could argue, nobody could, that the economic systems and the legal framework and the government in this country, despite all its flaws, still provides the greatest opportunity than any other country on the planet. And so much, we've hammered this point so many times, of what the entire world enjoys, it came from here. And there's a reason. It's because of the systems and the structure we have in place. It facilitates, it enables, it empowers all the great things that we have produced in our world. It mostly, overwhelmingly comes out of this country. There's no doubt about it. Mo says, go ahead and say it. You don't feel retirees contribute to the state. My suggestion, never retire. That's absolutely not true, Mose. And I hear what you're saying. I know it's tongue-in-cheek. No. They've worked their lives. They've earned retirement. They spend money. That contributes to the state. They also provide lots of wisdom. We're out of here today. I'll be back with you Wednesday. Be safe, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.